The Falling Man, Vladimir Komarov. In 1967, the Soviet Union was desperate to beat America to the moon. To celebrate Vladimir Lenin's birthday, the high-ranking politicians demanded a glorious space launch. The problem? The spacecraft, Soyuz 1, was a mechanical nightmare. Soviet engineers actually wrote a massive report documenting over 200 distinct structural flaws, including critical warnings that the parachute system was defective, but the political bosses overruled the engineers and refused to delay the launch. Vladimir Komarov was chosen to pilot the ship. He knew it was a suicide mission. His best friend, legendary hero Yuri Gagarin, begged him not to go, and even tried to disrupt the launch sequence to save him. But Komarov knew that if he backed out, the Soviet government would simply force Gagarin into the cockpit instead. Komarov explicitly stated he was flying the ship just to keep his friend alive. The chaos in orbit. The second the rocket hit outer space, everything broke. One of the main solar panels failed to open, instantly cutting the ship's electricity in half. With almost no power, the automatic navigation sensors died, and the capsule began tumbling violently through the pitch-black void. For 18 agonizing orbits, Komarov fought the ship manually, using up almost all his fuel just to stop the spinning. Realizing the mission was a total loss, ground control ordered an emergency re-entry. They Die in the Vacuum, 1971. Cosmonauts Georgy Dobrovolsky, Vladislav Volkov, and Viktor Patsayev were international heroes. They had just spent an incredible 22 days aboard Salyut 1, the world's very first operational space station, shattering human endurance records. Their mission was a magnificent success. On June 29th, they packed up their research, sealed the hatches, and began their descent back home. Every single part of the re-entry looked textbook perfect on ground control's monitors. The engines fired exactly on time. The heat shield protected them from the atmospheric fire. The parachutes deployed flawlessly, and the landing rockets cushioned their touchdown in the Kazakhstan desert. When the recovery team opened the capsule door, they were met with eerie, absolute silence. All three men were still strapped tightly into their seats, motionless, with dark blue patches on their skin. Frantically, doctors tried to perform CPR, but it was far too late. They had been dead for a long time. An investigation revealed that when the capsule was still 102 miles high in the absolute vacuum of space, explosive bolts were fired to discard the ship's orbital module. The violent shockwave of the explosion damaged a tiny, hidden pressure equalization valve underneath the seats. The valve jerked open prematurely. In less than 112 seconds, the entire air supply of the cabin was violently sucked out into the void of space. Because the Soviets did not require cosmonauts to wear bulky spacesuits inside the capsule at the time, the men were entirely unprotected. The sudden, total drop in pressure caused the air in their lungs to expand rapidly and tear through their tissue. Within 15 seconds, the vacuum completely starved their brains of oxygen, causing them to black out before they could even locate the leaking valve. To this day, they remain the only human beings to have ever died in actual outer space.
The Hypersonic Sideways Spin, Michael J. Adams, 1967. On November 15, 1967, elite test pilot Michael J. Adams climbed into the cockpit of the X-15 rocket plane. The plan was insane. A B-52 bomber would carry him up to 45,000 feet, drop him into midair, and Adams would ignite a massive 57,000-pound thrust rocket engine to blast himself past the edge of the atmosphere. At first, it went perfectly. The engine roared, accelerating Adams to a blinding 3,800 miles per hour. He soared up to 266,000 feet, officially crossing the boundary into outer space and earning his astronaut wings. But as he floated at the peak of his arc, a hidden electrical malfunction broke his control systems. Because there is no air in space, you can't use traditional wings to steer. The plane began to slowly drift and yaw sideways, but because it was a vacuum, Adams couldn't feel the movement. By the time the plane headed back down into Earth's atmosphere, it wasn't nose first, it was pointing completely sideways. When the plane hit the thicker air at Mach 5, the atmosphere acted like a solid brick wall. The plane went into a violent hypersonic spin. The rotational forces were so extreme that Adams was subjected to over 15 Gs of force. This meant his body felt 15 times heavier than normal, pinning him to his seat, draining the blood from his brain, and knocking him completely unconscious. At 65,000 feet, the immense aerodynamic pressure tore the aircraft to pieces. Adams never even had a chance to pull his ejection lever. His wreckage slammed into the Mojave Desert, making him the very first American casualty of a spaceflight mission.
The Columbia Disaster, 2003. On January 16, 2003, Space Shuttle Columbia lifted off for a routine 16-day scientific mission. Just 81 seconds into the launch, a briefcase-sized piece of foam insulation broke off the external fuel tank. Traveling at a staggering 1,500 miles per hour, the foam smashed violently into Columbia's left wing leading edge. NASA engineers saw the impact on review footage and begged management to let them use military satellites to take high-resolution photos of the wing to check for damage. Shockingly, NASA high-ups rejected the request, arrogantly claiming that foam strikes were common and wouldn't cause real harm. One manager even coldly argued that even if there was a hole, nothing could be done to fix it, so it was better not to know. The foam strike had actually punched a jagged 6 to 10-inch hole straight through the reinforced carbon heat shields on the wing. For over 2 weeks, the 7 astronauts laughed, worked, and called their families, having no idea their ship was fatally wounded. On February 1, Columbia began re-entry over the Pacific Ocean at 17,000 miles per hour. As the shuttle compressed the atmosphere, a brilliant shield of superheated 2,500-degree Fahrenheit plasma formed around the craft. Like a furnace, the plasma melted the aluminum internal framework of the left wing from the inside out. At 8:59 a.m., the structurally liquefied left wing completely tore off the shuttle. Without a wing, the shuttle instantly flipped sideways at Mach 18, and the brutal aerodynamic forces tore the entire spacecraft into thousands of burning pieces on live television, killing the crew instantly.